Here's Mr. Whitworth to answer some questions about hydroponics. How did you learn about hydroponics, and have you tried it or seen it before?
I've seen it a couple of times. Actually, there's a sort of a hydroponic farm not too far from my house I drive by now and then. I've read about it a little bit, but I've never done it.
Okay. Do you think it is more efficient, and why?
If you mean by efficiency how many plants you could get into a square meter of ground, for example, it's probably more efficient because you can stack them up vertically as opposed to just having a flat surface to work with. Cost, however, might be a different matter. If efficiency involves cost, I suppose it's possible, although I'm not an expert, that the initial setup of all the equipment for hydroponics might make it more expensive than just putting plants in the ground. So it might be tough to answer that question. It really depends on whether you're talking about how many plants you can get in or the cost. Maybe after the initial cost, once you have your equipment, then if you ran it for years and years, that might wind up being more cost effective too. So you can reuse the equipment.
Do you think you get like more vegetables and plants out of the hydroponics than just a regular?
I would think you could, because you could stack them up, as I said. You could go vertically and have various levels, and from the little bit I've read, my impression is that if hydroponics is done right, at least with some plants, you can get higher yields than folks often get in the ground, so maybe so.
What will the future of agriculture look like?
I would say there are two things to think about. One is the genetics revolution that's going on right now is going to change things. It already is. We already have a lot of genetically engineered crops. Now not everybody's completely comfortable with that, but it's happening and it makes a difference. You can genetically engineer crops to be pest resistant and engineer them for yields and perhaps drought resistance and things like that. So that has potential to revolutionize what we're doing, whether you grow them hydroponically or in the ground. The other thing might be hydroponics. I mean, if ground gets to be in limited supply, if the population of the earth continues to grow in a way that ground becomes increasingly at a premium, increasingly expensive, then it's possible that something that allows you to stack things up vertically and do it more efficiently might just have a tremendous appeal. That would be pretty far in the future, I think, where the genetic revolution is going to change things more immediately. So it'll be interesting to watch and see which of those two turns out to be the bigger player.
And what about aeroponics?
Aeroponics, as I understand it, now I know even less about aeroponics than I do about hydroponics firsthand. I've never even seen aeroponics, I don't think. Aeroponics is basically sort of, some people consider it, from what I've read, some people consider it sort of a first cousin to hydroponics, because you're growing the plants not in soil, but with their roots essentially hanging in the air. But the difference is the roots still have to be wet. If you let the roots dry out, the plant's going to die. So in a way, it's like hydroponics, except instead of immersing the roots in water, you're spraying them constantly. You're kind of misting them and keeping them in a really humid environment. So it's kind of interesting. You have less weight if you're misting the roots instead of having these containers of water.